It's National Signing Day, well, pre-National Signing Day, early National Signing, whatever you want to call it. It's signing day, and it was a big one for Coach Harsin and the Auburn Tigers. Let's talk about a few takeaways from the day and our opinions on what went down for the Auburn recruiting class. Welcome to the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks. Our content here and on our podcast network may tend to be Auburn sports heavy, but if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe so you never miss any content. Thank you to members of our booster club like Felix Gonzalez, who help produce videos like this. Honestly, we'd be doing this video probably the day after signing day, but there's already some big news that's already kind of leaking out there that'll be coming out the day after National Signing Day, and we're going to have to talk about that mainly then. So for right now, let's go ahead and get out our initial takeaways and impressions of National Signing Day and how it went for Auburn. Again, technically this is the early signing period. It's going to get confusing now which one is actually the real one. There'll be another one in February. But this one was super exciting. A lot happened for Auburn, and a lot more was even on the table than a lot of people gave Auburn credit for even having an opportunity to get. Now, when we go into these takeaways, I want to stress that we are not focusing on stats. We are not focusing on stars. We are not even focusing on rankings, because there are much more important aspects and takeaways from this National Signing Day for Auburn than those specific things. They're all well and good, but there are some bigger storylines here that I think are going to pay bigger dividends than stats, stars, or rankings. And when I go through these aren't really a ranking saying this is the most important thing. This is simply the first things that came to my mind. So start with number one, geography. And what do I mean by this? Well, obviously recruiting is not just focused in Alabama, the Southeast. It goes way out there. But I noticed some particular things about where the recruits were coming from for at least this first part of the recruiting signing cycle. Auburn, obviously being in the Southeast, it's always had a strong hold on the Southeast, particularly parts of Alabama, Georgia, and Florida as well. Interesting to note here was the allocation of a lot of the talent and where it was coming from specifically in the Southeast. If you notice, there is a concentration not just on the Southeast, but the most southern parts of the Southeast. Auburn's always had an influence, but that was under previous regimes, and now it's great to see that the Coach Harsin era is going to be able, at least for now, maintain those ties and lines of recruiting into the program still. So if you look at where some of these guys are coming from, you'll see Savannah, you'll see Valdosta, Fort Lauderdale, Mobile, Baton Rouge. Big things coming up from those two things in just a second. But those are some really great areas for Auburn to be drawing from, and I think it bodes well for this staff and their ability to continue to reach through that pipeline. Also, you'll notice that they reached out into parts outside of the southern states. They went to Nebraska, they went to Kansas, they went to Utah, and they had chances at other players outside of the traditional states as well. So Coach Harsin definitely used his ties out in the West Coast and Midwest and tried to take advantage of them to the best of his ability, and there were some dividends that were paid. Number two, the dynamic duo. You would think I'd be talking about players here, but we're really not going to talk too much about specific players. Well, maybe one thing, but this dynamic duo is Zac Etheridge and Travon Reed. The defensive back coach, Zac Etheridge at Auburn, is obviously someone you would expect to be heavily involved in recruiting. He's an Auburn player from the past and a beloved Auburn player with a great story. Nobody sells Auburn better than an Auburn man, and not to take anything away from Coach Harsin and other members of his staff who aren't traditional Auburn family members, but there's just something about having a guy that was already sold on being an Auburn guy selling it again. That is something that's hard to beat. Throw on top of that a guy that's just been brought into the staff in Travon Reed, who's looking to cut his teeth in the coaching rankings. Now, he's got a special role within the staff of Coach Harsin, not a traditional type of coach, but he has been instrumental in recruiting this season. And the dynamic duo of those two together, the rapport they built with some of these kids, are not going to just pay dividends for this recruiting cycle, but for cycles to come as well. Travon Reed, keep that name in your mind for future coaching opportunities down the line. Number three, Merry Flipmas. Yes, it's a funny little saying, and honestly, I kind of don't really get into all the funny sayings, but this one kind of just makes me laugh a little bit because it's at the expense of LSU and Alabama. So Merry Flipmas to our rivals. A little bit of throwing it back in your face for the couple of years that y'all been flipping and taking people away from us and having them do silent commits to you while they were openly committed to us. So what goes around comes around. First off, let's start off with Jadarian Rhyme, a longtime LSU commit. Auburn went down there the day before National Signing Day, and just said, come on over here and be an Auburn Tiger. So a flip for LSU as well. And then on signing day, Auburn was able to flip linebacker commit for Alabama, Robert Woodyard, who is arguably now in some cases the highest rated commit for Auburn's class at this point. You're going to see a lot of transitioning from him even being wanted by the Alabama fans or stuff like that. We got Curtis Perry. Okay, that's great. That's great for you guys, but we got Woodyard, so we can just keep arguing about that all day. The fact of the matter is, it goes around and it comes around. Merry Flipmas to you, LSU and Alabama. Number 4, the NFL pitch. Now, this has to do much less with actual going out there and meeting with recruits, going out there and trying to flip people. This has to do with what actually happened on signing day itself. And there's obviously always the hype on social media about this, but there was just something special about it today. With Auburn obviously rising up rankings and things like that, we're not really focusing on that, but the marketing side of this was done, I thought, very, very well. There was a clear message sent throughout everything that we are your path to the NFL. Coach Harsin and his staff set up an entire signing day atmosphere centralized around the theme of basically the NFL draft, using the same ring chime, the kind of stage setup and things like that. It thought it was just a really clever way to market themselves, not just as Auburn, but as a route to the next level as well. On top of that was your traditional marketing things they do on social media, which included for every single commit, the initial post that they had signed, some highlights of them, and then followed up with a personalized message from a particular positional coach or a coach that had recruited them the hardest. That to me was one of the more special touches that I've seen from any recruiting staff on any team in quite some time. Hats off to Coach Harsin, and hats off to the rest of the Auburn staff members that were involved in this. It was a well done job. 5, and our last takeaway, and this one is more kind of looking ahead and reminding of something. I'm calling it the forgotten ones of this recruiting class. People will forget that Caden Story is committed to Auburn still and was going to sign today, but you can understand with some of the tumultuousness that happens in the offseason, kids want to take a beat and take a second to make sure they're making the right decision. It's important to make sure that we make him feel comfortable so we can secure him for this class as a still important part of it. There's also Trey Donaldson, who is the dual sport commit for football and basketball, a point guard in basketball, so he's already here signed for that, so he's technically part of this class. Most people, I think, favor him for his football skills, but we'll just see what happens there. He is definitely a part of this class as well and should be remembered. And then there's this one. While technically not a part of the class yet and may not even be by the time you're watching this video, there's Jeffrey Imba, if I am pronouncing that correctly. So he has said that he is going to commit and sign on signing day. However, he will not announce it until the 19th of December. He's doing it with some type of French media, which I think is part of his heritage. Don't know the whole story on that. But for whatever reason, he has said he signed today and told whoever that is going to be and asked that they just keep it silent until he announces it on the 19th. A lot of people assume that Auburn has this #1 JUCO commit in the bag, but we'll have to wait and see. So just remember and don't forget him. So those are my takeaways from National Signing Days, or at least the beginning of National Signing. We'll just call it National Signing Day months, because it's basically going to stretch from December to February as it is at this point. I want to hear from you. What were your takeaways from signing day? You can talk about some specific players if you'd like. Do that in the comments section below, but also make sure you join us if you're watching this before the live stream on Wednesday night, the night of National Signing Day. We're going to be taking live callers from you, just reacting about National Signing Day and talking about everything that stuck out to us. You can go back and watch the replay as well. Hope to see you there. If you enjoy this type of content, please help support it by smashing that like button. If you don't want to miss anything, whether it be an upload or a live stream, make sure you are subscribed along with having that notification bell marked. If you'd like to take the next step and help support some of the content we do here, check out the links in the description for ways that you can do that. 2 of the things that I'll point out to you are being part of a YouTube channel membership program we have here, or being part of the Booster Club membership on Patreon. Both start at $1 a month with a little bit of differences. Check both of those out if you're interested. Thank you for tuning into the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks. War Eagle.